My name's Monk Rowe, and I'm very pleased to have bassist Michael Max Fleming with me today. In preparation for a gig at Hamilton College, I'm going to start out with a real easy question. What is your idea of the role of a bass player in a band?
Well, in a sentence, the BASS is the BASE of the harmony. Is that good enough?
That's good. Who's the main timekeeper in the band? Because I've had drummers say, well, it's me, of course. And I've had bass players say, it's really me.
Well, you say main. Well, let me try. What turns out to be the predominant utterance of the rhythm section? In other words, it's not either or. At least, I mean, some people play like that, but to me, that's an inferior approach. I don't think that way. Mm-hmm. I got the time, you got the time, although there have been times when I've had to dominate, or people have tried to dominate me. But to me, it's about a consensus. And to me, those are the successful rhythm sections, those that have the same thing in mind and working together and can feel each other. And not, I got it and you follow me, or you got it and I follow. To me, that is totally beneath me and anybody I ever want to play with.
Do you have particular rhythm sections that you, over the years, have told your students to listen carefully to?
No.
Really?
No. I just haven't. Maybe I should have or should have.
Well, okay.
Well, I never did it.
All right.
That's not part of my approach. That's not part of my method.
Well, where'd your method come from? Now, was there a point in your life where you said, I think that I could be a professional musician?
Was it, okay, no.
Because some people really know by the time they're in 4th or 5th grade what they want to do. And oftentimes it's musicians. But some people, it's later in life that they sort of fall into it. So I'm basically wondering, when did you take the path?
Okay. When my first instrument was piano, and I just realized that in my community, as 6-year-olds, we had a band. All right. Well, later I went to accordion. When I went to accordion, I had fantasies and visions of playing in front of people. And I just had visions of myself doing that. After that, after I stopped playing accordion, I was a doo-wopper. From the age of 9, I could give everybody their parts. Oh. Bobby, you sing do-do-do-do-do-do, and I could tell Johnny, you do this. At 9, I could do that because my mother taught me, as a 6-year-old at the piano, she would rehearse an imaginary choir. Sopranos, altos. So at a very young age, I was exposed to that. But that went on and on and on. And my uncle, my mother's youngest brother, was a virtuoso on many instruments. And he told me, he said, Michael, if you get you a bass, I'll take you on the gig with me. I like that. Why not? Make money and have fun. So I was in the 7th grade, 8th grade, tried to take up the upright bass. Well, I'm sorry, right now we have enough bass players, but if you would like, I'll teach you, you can play the tuba. So at age 13, I started playing the tuba. Basically self-taught. because the high school teacher, he was busy writing music for the spring show. So he said, here, you take this bit. I can't do it now. Gave me the mouthpiece.
Yeah.
So gave me the horn. Showed me the first page. If you have any questions, just come back to my office and ask me. So guess how many times I had to go back to him?
How many?
Never.
You had an ear for low notes.
Well, I knew the bass clef from the piano, and I knew the instructions in the book. I played.
Yeah.
So I played all through high school. I represented my school in the all-city band orchestra. But in the meanwhile, now, okay, so there's a lot. I go. That was one high school, by the way. It was the same high school that Frank Foster went to. And there's another guy, Fred, piano player, I can't think of his name. They both went to that same high school. But anyway, so in the 10th grade, the teacher tells me, that's even when did I decide? The teacher, who was a bass player, said, I need somebody for this spring concert. So he took me and showed me how to hold a bow. He gave me 2 lessons and said the same thing, sent me in a room with instruments are kept. If you have any questions, come and ask me. But before that, there was another school I went to where this teacher must have sent a note. They sent, you know, when you transfer from one school, they sent, good student, does this, does, you know. On that level, I would think that teachers, because that teacher, and when I went to that teacher, he locked me in the room with a tuba and gave me some tuba solos. Hall of the Mountain King, the Marines in, at the end of the year, I played at the concert at the end of the year. Anyway, that was that. Then I went to this next teacher who gave me the upright bass, and he let me take it home over the summer. And my uncle would come by every day. He didn't have a piano. My mother let him play, showed me how to play tunes, how to spell changes. So then the bug, it bit me.
That's really interesting. And when you say he showed you how to play tunes, can you describe that a little more?
Okay. The first tune I learned on the bass, and I teach my students this tune now, to this day. And later on I had the privilege of meeting the man that wrote the song. The song is Lover Man. Now, the first 2 changes to Lover Man are D minor to G7. Those are open strings on the bass. So that's the first song my uncle taught me. And he wrote down changes. Around that time. What, you seem like you have a question.
Did he, I'm getting pretty specific here, but do you remember, did he write?
That'll be $50.
Yeah. Prices, this is going to be an expensive one because I got a lot of these kinds of questions. Did he write D minor?
Yes, chord symbols.
Right.
D minor 7.
7. Okay.
With slashes, 1, 2.
And how long did it take you to learn? What does that mean? The little lamb and the 7.
Well, all I played was roots at first.
At first, of course.
You know, so I didn't try to walk. I would play 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, da 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 G G C ba da G G C C da F F F.
Yeah.
How long does that take?
Well, for some people, it would take a while if they didn't have ears.
Yeah. Well, then now you're bringing up the good subject about ears. Yeah. So, does that answer that?
Yeah. Yeah.
That was a $50 question.
Well,
because that's powerful stuff.
I'm willing to go higher than that.
Never mind. Never mind, this is not about that. This is about information being recorded.
That's right.
And getting
That's
an
right.
idea of how different people take a pathway to the same thing.
But it's so important for the bass player. You know, horn players can get by a lot without knowing exactly what these chord symbols mean, because they don't have to play all the time, and if they make a slight error in a note, they can slide up and make it sound like they meant to do it.
Where I come from is more specific than that.
Okay. Well, I'm fascinated by bass players and what they do. Yeah.
But during that time, because I was being taught how to play the chords, how to play at the time what they called 2/5s, I didn't know it was that.
Yeah.
I didn't hear that till maybe I was college age. You know, I didn't, 2/5. That was just minor. I knew that was a natural progression.
Yeah. So when your uncle was teaching you this in the beginning, what year was this? What years? About when? Come on, you can tell me.
2016.
Okay.
I was crawling. Milk was running out of the side. Why do you have wine?
Because I want to know what would the music, the popular music at the time, that
It was the 50s.
Okay, so you were hearing some doo-wop.
Oh, but I had okay, see, now you're getting into some juicy stuff.
Yeah.
My mother played piano, her father played piano, but my father played, and my aunts played, we call it the Victrola, the record player. So I had, my father made sure I heard every kind of music that ever existed.
Okay.
So, in other words, 3 years before that, my aunt gave me, who was a sister to this brother, gave me a Charlie Parker with strings, 78 for my birthday. And all of my mother's sisters were married to amateur musicians. One was a drummer, one was a piano player. So each time when I go to everybody's house, and I was an only child, music was my babysitter. So at one place I hear Earl Garner. You know, another place I hear Sarah Vaughan. Each house, another place I hear Max Roach. So I was inundated with music between my father, who I probably felt somehow I might one day be a musician, although he didn't want me to be, but he was very fatherly and he wasn't going to destroy me.
Oh, wow.
But I think he wanted me to be something else, but he couldn't deny that it was in me.
Mm-hmm.
But, and going back to your question, my senior year of high school, I spent all that time saying, do you want to be a musician? If you want to be a musician, are you aware, are you willing to pay the price to do all it takes to become a musician? Going through stories of hardships that musicians went through and this and that. So halfway through, yes, I'm going to be a musician, and I say this now half-heartedly, but to me at that time, that was what do priests and nuns take a vow of poverty?
Yeah.
So I was looking at it like that.
That's a pretty mature attitude to even sort of be aware that it's an important decision and that you're going to have to pay some serious dues to do it. Maybe because you had musicians around you and your uncle, and you were a little more aware of the realities of it.
I was playing with him at 17. That summer, that's before this time when I'm making this decision.
Okay.
I'm at home on a Sunday afternoon and the phone rings. It's my uncle. Call my mother Beck. Her name was Rebecca. Beck, the bass player didn't show up. Can you send Michael over to what was Newport, Kentucky, which was the Las Vegas, Sin City of the world? Everything went on over there. And you know what my mother said to him? Are you out of your mind? Send my baby over there with those cutthroats? Silence on the phone. But she had to back off because a year before that I turned professional doo-wopper, and she said I couldn't go, and she found my clothes in the hallway, and she found out that I was going anyway, so she gave me what little money she had, sent me on my way. So she saw this is who my son is. If I tell him no, he's gonna go anyway.
Wow.
So finally she says, okay, put me in a taxi, sent me over there. And that was the beginning, playing with Eddie Clean, Ed Vincent.
Oh, no kidding. Wow. So you were playing mix of jazz and blues
He was,
on
he
this
was
gig.
a consummate jazz player.
Yeah.
He wrote tune-up.
All right.
He wrote 4. Miles Davis stole them. But I knew that then, see, so I'm not just coming in this music like, I'm not going to mention any music schools, but it's a little more, like destiny, like, you need to know this to get this stuff. And this was good about this interview because not everybody took the path that I took.
Mm-hmm.
So, go ahead.
Do you recall what you made on that gig?
Oh man, you ask some nasty questions.
No, I think it's great. Hey, I made.
You wanna know what color underwear I got on?
made-
You know what I mean? These
I
are tough questions. Okay, I'll tell you. Oh man, you rough. If I'd known you this rough, I don't know. I'd accepted this, agree to do this interview here. Well, I never. Wow, you good. Okay.
I made $4 on my first gig.
But you're shameless. You ask me, you don't care what I think of you. But anyway, here we go. I'm going to answer you.
Okay.
Okay. At the time, all the other musicians in Cincinnati, black musicians, because black musicians did one thing and the white musicians, we were talking about the 50s. We're not talking about, well, there's some strange stuff going on now, but we're not talking about that. They made $10 a night. Across the river, you made 15.
Was that because of the white community on one side of the river and the black community on one side?
No. With the river, it had to do with the nature of, they had casinos, they had money.
Okay.
And they were smart people. Smart people, I'm not a businessman, I get myself in so much trouble. But smart people know that sometimes if you pay people better, they'll appreciate their job better and not think about going somewhere else. Mm-hmm. Or there's a lot of reasons why you pay people well. Short-sighted people don't understand that. But you figure, well, but I'm losing money. Yeah, but you got to look at the big picture. Smart people pay people and they get better results. That's just, what I know. I'm not a businessman. I'm not an economics professor. I'm just a plain old jazz musician who's been all over the world. That's all.
That's good. Okay, so did people tell you you gotta move on? You gotta go to New York. Did you hear that from?
That's so good. It's 2 ways I heard it. Every musician, some of them who worked in Las Vegas, some of them who had worked with what they call carnivals traveling up and down, they always said, see, we have a saying about Cincinnati is a good place to be from, which is true. So a lot of those musicians, when they would come through and they saw I was a young guy, man, don't get stuck here. Get out of here. Don't get stuck. So I heard it like that. And then there was a school teacher who was frustrated, but he was a jazz musician. He couldn't get a job in the Cincinnati school system, but he was a substitute at our school. And just like I asked Coleman Hall, because I always sought counsel, you know. I said, "What, do you have a formula? What should I do? I want to go to New York and be a jazz musician. What do you think I should do?" He was a trombone player, which is not an easy instrument to make a living on in the jazz world. He says, "Well, number one, go to school or whatever, go and learn to get around your instrument." Very simple, that's the terminology. Learn to get around your instrument. Number two, go on the road, play with rhythm and blues bands, play with whoever you want to play with, get experience. Then you move to New York and find your way. So that's what I did.
What were some of the, did you play with rhythm and blues bands and
Yeah, but they were
swing
right
bands?
there. They were right there.
Okay.
Well, I was doing it with Clean Head, and then Scott, what was his name? Played with the organ player.
Shirley Scott?
No, this is a saxophone player. His name was, he was a genius. And I'm having trouble remembering names, but the answer to it, I played with, I can't think of their names, but there were a lot of local rhythm and blues bands, you know, that I played with, you know. The main thing is what he was saying, get experience playing, you know, and there were a lot, so I did that, you know. And so I did that, and then I went on. You were asking me if I played with the bands, and I'm saying, yeah, even though I can't.
Yeah, sure.
So I'm just trying to think of them, but they don't come to mind. Okay, but go on to the next.
Okay, so did you save up some money to, you know, before you went to New York, or you just? See, I never did that.
But I'm not going to tell you how much now.
Yeah, okay,
So
okay, I won't
cut
ask
you off at the past. You know more than my mother knew about me, man. Come on, man. Okay.
Okay, so you moved to New York, and how does?
Yeah, I had a little nest egg.
Nest egg, yeah.
I had to. I was, you know.
How does a young man find his way in New York City?
Okay, how did I get there?
How'd you get there?
Okay. I went to New York in the fall of 1963. Spring of 63, I came to New York with a local band which was called Curtis Pegler and the Jazz Disciples. They made recording.
He was a sax player, wasn't he?
See, you're good, yeah. That's why I went with them. We played at Count Basie's club because Count Basie was managing them at the time. He later went on to play with Count Basie's band, and Ray Charles and different people like that. So I came with that band in the spring, and I made contact with different people, made contacts, you know. And then that fall, a childhood friend of mine was a trumpet player. His name was Jerry Ayers. He came to his grandmother's funeral, and he was in town for 3 or 4 days. And he said, if you come to New York, you can stay at my place. I got a room for you. So within a few hours, I made up my mind. Broke my mother's heart, I'm sure. I had to get out of there. That was it. And I took whatever my little life savings was, whatever that was, and said, I'm going to make it a do or die. Another background to that, 1960, 3 years before that, I worked at a club with a guy named D. Felice. He was a drummer. The trumpet player was a guy who played with Duke Ellington. His name was Bill Berry. And there's another guy that wrote for Woody Herman. His name was Gordon Brisker. He went to that first high school where I played the tuba. And across the street, the woman owned a club called Mother's, named after the TV show Mother's. The Rainbow Club started bringing in groups from New York. So every group that came in, I met them and hung out with the bass players. So that game, when I got to New York, I had contacts. And I met a lot of people, you know, I'm not going to name their names. But I met them. So when I got to New York, it wasn't like, who are you? They knew, you know. They knew me.
So then you start getting calls maybe to sub for people. Hey, I can't make my gig tonight. Can you cover for me? Is that how that works?
Yeah. I was telling you downstairs about the organization. And so this puts it in, this is going to make it history now. But there was a group called Professionals Unlimited. And basically, they didn't think that way, but basically it was an organized clique. But what makes it more remarkable, there's all kind of cliques, was that these were all bass players from different cities. See, at the time there was a Chicago clique, there was a Detroit clique, you know, there was Los Angeles clique, there's the Boston. So what I mean by that, usually those groups exchanged work among themselves. But what happened when all of these bass players came together with a common purpose, in other words, to dramatize the bass violin. Wow, we got a little stew here.
Mm-hmm.
The guy from Detroit, well, we're at a meeting. Hey, I got this. You might call. But what my forte was that where I came from, they didn't really have a clique. So I wasn't a threat to anyone. I just had to play good. And that's what I tried to do every time I went out. Play with all my heart and soul. That's what happened.
What happens as a bassist when you go to play a gig and maybe it's a pickup group or something and someone calls a tune and you don't know it? But you're supposed to know it. You're supposed to be responsible for outlining the changes. How do you get through that?
I got through that from one big experience from, I didn't tell you, but the first major gig that I got in after I moved to New York was with Mary Lou Williams. The liaison between the swing and the bebop. A lot of people don't know it, but she helped Monk form his sound, helped Bud Powell form their sounds. She was well respected. She's my musical mother. And that's who within 6 weeks, I got into her hands and her influence. So I'm playing with her. She's coming out of retirement. She's playing at Wells upstairs. They had 2 bands. A lot of places had 2 bands in it. I'm upstairs. I come up off of a break one night, and there's this guy sitting there, older gentleman. His name is Ben Webster. So I come up to him. Good evening, sir. All prim and proper. In a way, you can say a country bumpkin. I don't know what you... with a Midwestern accent. So sound like somebody from Chicago, maybe. So, what would you like to play? I'm talking to Ben Webster. Body and Soul. Now, from my Cincinnati training, there was a culture there. If you couldn't call a change, the tune all the way through, you don't play that. I'm sorry, no, they play something. Could you play something else? I'm telling you the culture with my uncle and the way they were. So now, I say that, and a chill comes over the room. because people sitting, they're not really playing, but they're watching. But I don't know if it was because his expression changed on his face or whatever. But I said, I'm sorry, I don't know that. Would you call another tune, please? But hey, I guess his response didn't come rapidly enough. I can't say it, so
You can
I'll
say
mouth
it.
It's a word. It's a dirty word.
It's all right.
So you know what he said to me? You ain't shit. Now, my uncle was also a street person. And those were fighting words, partner. So now, to my uncle, I'm saying, I got a rough customer here. So, according to my uncle, when you're going to jump on somebody like that, you orchestrate it. First you're going to do just like a football. That's where he learned it from. First you snap the ball, then you make an end run, and then you fake. So now which way am I going to whip this old man? So then a voice came in my mind and says, don't do that, Michael. But you know Charles Ming has got a bad reputation. You just got in town. Don't you start a fight. You'll never get work. So whatever happened, I don't remember what tune we played. But we played something else. And then I walked across the floor to Mary Lou Williams, who was sitting there. And she's looking at me with this indefinable look. And I'm saying, I'm like a little kid. I just coming to my mommy. And she looks at me. And she says, you ain't shit. Man, don't you ever embarrass me like that. When you don't know a tune, use your ears. You ask me about how I do what I do, how I did. Use your ears. That was 1963. On and off I played with her on up through 1971, on even further than that. And during that time she gave me little hints of what you do. So when I come on a gig and somebody's, do you know it's wonderful? Yeah. They ask me, you know it's wonderful? Wonderful. Yeah, play it.
Okay. Do you
First time around. Second time around, I got you. But she showed me. So does that answer you?
It does. And it's a perfect story because body and soul.
That's a sophisticated too.
It is. And if you don't know it, how you know where that bridge is going to go, right?
10 years later I'd have got to it. And with that whole thing, it's an unwritten rule that, if you hear something one time down, you should be able to get enough of it and manage enough of it and to be able to, second time around, do something with it.
Okay.
And I mean, that's with people I know. I don't know what somebody else, they would say, if you don't know, but I'm telling you, that's the level that I've operated at.
Okay. I think it's really interesting that Mary Lou Williams said,
Well, see, don't see, that's why I started. Don't concentrate on that. That's just that's the story.
I know, but I like the
That's
way
just the
that
truth.
she didn't want to be, you embarrassed her.
She meant that though.
Yeah.
Because what it is, they go back. See, they may have been. They go back to Kansas City,
Mm-hmm.
and so they have mutual respect.
Yeah.
And so they got circles of people that, and I wasn't in that circle, but he's coming to see her. Maybe, I don't know, he may have flew in from Chicago, whatever. And you got this little creep with you? The Great Mary, you can't do better than this little greenhorn? His was like that.
Oh boy, that's great. Good story. Is there a difference in playing behind singers than playing behind?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Like I said, my first wife was a singer. So I came in contact with all of that entailed. And so I got to see, naturally I had the same, I knew how musicians, a lot of musicians hate singers. Oh my goodness. Oh, here comes one to say, oh. But because I was married to singers and I liked singers and my father and my aunt, they played singers, I enjoyed singers, I didn't have a problem with them. And that's how I learned, listen to the ink spots, that's how I learned bass lines as a little kid. All the standards that Bill Kenny used to sing. So I didn't, what's wrong with singers? This was love. My father, remember, son, my father hated bebop, by the way.
Oh.
That's skeet music, they don't play the melody. Play the melody, son.
What ski music?
Skeet. That's
Skeet,
just that's
skeet.
it. Play the melody. Remember that, son, because he would ask people advice, and musician told him that's important for me to learn the melody. So I didn't have a problem with singers, you know. And my wife would come home crying about all the dirty tricks the musicians would play on them. And so what happened with me, I played with anybody. That's a whole nother story. Before I got to New York, I quit for a year. And then I didn't play for a whole year, anything, because I didn't want to play rhythm and blues. I was elitist. I was an elitist. I only played jazz. If I couldn't get a jazz playing gig, if I couldn't get a gig playing jazz, no, don't call me, I don't want that. I'm a jazz musician. But then, so I went and got a day gig for a whole year. I was miserable. So at the end of that year, I started saying, you know what? If I can get a job playing anything, I'll do it. Get me out of this day gig. And so so when I came to New York, that was all part of my mindset. I'll play with anybody. That's the other part of being able to play in any key, all of that. So there's a number of factors that help me to be able to play music. I've never done, since I've been in New York, I've never had a job doing anything else.
Never had a day gig since you
No,
moved?
not non-musical.
Non-musical.
I mean, I might have tried, there was a time I tried to find out about business, but I wasn't making my living off of that.
Yeah.
That was just experimenting.
Well, a good musician doesn't have to like the music they play on every gig.
I mean, they just are just very professional.
They just need to be professional, right?
Yeah, well, but there again, that's you got to talk to each person.
Mm-hmm.
That's philosophical, you know. It depends on where they're coming from, you know, and then what their sentiments are, and how they define themselves, you know. And you got just as many musicians as you have varieties of flowers, because we're people, and that's what we're different, and it's okay.
Did you have a sense at that time in the mid-60s, you're making your way, the idea of making it, of getting to a certain goal, thinking that's when I'll really be happy, that's where I want to get to? Was it defined, or was it just a gradual?
No, because I don't separate music from life in life from music, or you from me, or me from this floor. It's all life. So, in trying to define life, which is nearly impossible, you come up with little tidbits or little ideas of what life is. And there's something that comes, there's a word that comes in. Perfection. Perfectionist. So when you go down that road, you realize things are to be perfected. Perfection is to be pursued. But once you get to perfection, that changes nothing. Everything changes, so there's no, now I'm the king of the mountain. No, in answer to your question, no, I never did that.
Okay. It reminds me of something I think you said.
Oh, what's that?
This was from, I think, a New York Magazine or something like that.
A quote?
A quote.
How did you find that? That's interesting. Go ahead.
Like it says, I push myself to find a way to do things different in a world where nothing is new under the sun.
Well, see, that's kind of in line.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't remember saying that. Did I say say that?
That sounds good.
Yeah, I'll take it.
Yeah.
But it's that kind of thinking, because music doesn't have to be all stiff and prim and proper. There's just formalities for everything, and there's sometimes where you need to be formal, there's times where you need to be informal and earthy. So I guess it depends on the situation as far as the level of seriousness and that I might apply to a situation, But yeah. So what's the point of that? Me saying that? How did that strike you? Or what did that?
Well, I was curious about what you meant about nothing new under the sun. If you were talking specifically about music, or even new things come from somewhere else, so it's not.
Yeah,
it's just an evolution.
Yes, a change is a matter of adapting, taking the same, a wheel and using it for something else. A steering wheel, whoa, a ferris wheel.
Yeah.
It's a wheel. It's not a Koopa Koopa. When I put it on a merry-go-round, it's still a wheel.
Okay.
That's what I'm saying.
Okay. You mentioned back in Cincinnati, you had a pay scale for black musicians and a pay scale for white musicians.
Yeah, but that was just between Kentucky and.
Okay.
But generally speaking, yes, the white musicians made more.
Right.
They had a different, even their scale. We had two different unions.
Uh-huh. Did the same thing happen in New York?
Yeah, well,
in the 60s?
That's not music. That's just culturally the way things have evolved.
Right.
Queen Elizabeth, her son's children, from where they had to go to from where I had to go is different because of the cultural, and it just happens to be. Now, if you go over to Egypt, and your skin is white, you might be a second-class citizen because you're not the right religion. So it just happens that we're talking about white and black. But it's very clear how that is the way it is. George Washington, was he Chinese? Edison? See that? Edison? Was he Jamaican? Was he from the Congo? Edison? Even though there were people there who were working under him who had very bright people, bright black people with Edison that helped him, invented some of the things that he got credit for. But because of the way things are set up socially, anthropologically, if you know, that's the way it is. I mean, it's obvious, and as I don't grieve over it because it won't make a difference. To grieve over it, but it's just obvious that's the way it is.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and is that's the way it is, and that's has been our history. That doesn't mean that there it is. That it's not stagnant. It's changed. There's been progress. Mm-hmm. We had a black president. How about that? We had Jackie Robinson. How about that? So, you know, it's changing, you know. But if you just open your eyes, you know, we don't have to have a debate, a formal debate over, you know, that's the way it is, man.
Do you think it'll always be that way? Well, you know, I apologize because you already answered that question. You're talking about a progression. And just because something's the way it is now, it may change, but...
Unfortunately, how about this? Which is a big part of the hysteria. What if it evolves to the roles are reversed?
Mm.
Then I make it sure.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not saying that's the way it's going to be. But I'm just saying that's the nature of how things evolve and change. It's that volatile. It could, one event can mess everything up, man, or change everything. One event, one dumb, stupid move. Yeah, I'm not saying it was dumb for it to be reversed. I just want people to get along. So I'm not interested in, yeah, that's all. Do I want to be king? Yeah, sign me up.
Oh, can you describe for me what, let's say the late 60s, if you were doing a record date with Rasan or anybody else, what exactly, how much time you got in the studio and what was the pressure like? Was there pressure?
Okay, I did 2 records with Rasan. The one I Talk with the Spirits, you may have run across that, where he's Serenade to a Cuckoo. Mm-hmm. That's me. Okay. For me, that was my second record. The first record I made with him, they didn't put my name on the record jacket. So that was traumatic.
What was the name of the record?
Gifts and Messages.
Okay.
That was on Mercury. That's right after Mercury turned into Limelight. So, but on the track, my name, he announces my name. So that's better than the jacket can get torn, so it's almost indelible. Not really indelible, but it's right on the record as opposed to being on the liner notes. Yeah, but what was it? What do you ask me? What was it like?
Were you more critical of your own playing because you knew you were going to hear it back? Did you play differently?
With him, it was one thing. With him, the records I made, basically we played what we played on the gig. We didn't write charts. I made up my parts. Nobody gave me a part. The whole group, it was just a beautiful thing in a way. And so when we went into the studio, I was nervous on that first record, but we were playing what we played in every night. Everything he did was so spontaneous. You never knew what he was going to do. He never counted off the tunes. He never gave keys. He just started playing.
I just got this image of you and the piano player, like, you know, one of you whispering to the other, what key we're in or
no.
something?
Mary
No?
Lou stuff, no.
You
never.
just, you
Oh,
just,
it's Paulin. Remember when Mary Lou told me, don't you embarrass me? I just... And so I learned to use my ear, you know, and that was it. I would, on gigs, I would go with guys that would play any. Put the pinky here, I wouldn't give in to that. Even though they were offering that, they play a new tune. And sometimes I'd act like, but I wouldn't do that. You know why I wouldn't do that? This is a little, I didn't get this from Mary Lou Williams, I just understood that it wasn't a good thing to do. Because if somebody, if you get used to watching some, because my uncle, that was in the beginning, he would do that sometimes when he would call the tune out. You know, when I went over there with Clean Aid, he'd call out, D minor, G7, C7, 4 beats. He could do that, he was good. But what I found is if you got accustomed to that, there was going to come a time when you'd be in the crook of the piano and you couldn't see their fingers. No, so I can't do that because I'm going to be, and that's going to weaken me. I'm going to develop a dependency. No, I don't do that. Does that make sense to you?
it does indeed. And you know what's replaced that now is the internet.
Oh, hello.
You know,
The
if you want to
internet.
learn a song, it used to be you'd put the record on and you would
Yeah.
play, and you'd listen for those bass, I'd listen
Yeah.
for the bass note. And now you can type it up and
Yeah.
there it is for you. And you can start to depend on it.
Yeah, but that's the problem because I've had people that I've taught and then I run into them years later. They go on the gig with a little fake book sitting right there. That just turns me off. Maybe it's okay, but if you well, back in the day when, in which as far as I'm concerned, from 1945 to 1965, that was where jazz was at its peak. And most of those groups then, after, if they weren't big bands, Hartford, Cannonball, Hadley, Miles Davis, you never saw them with music on the bands. Think about it. They dressed up, they didn't do it. And so that's what happened to me. So I came up in that period, and that was all in line with having the ears and everything. And I ran into a shock when I got to the place where I was going to play on Broadway. Because for 10 years, hadn't read any music, although I had gone to conservatory and studied sight reading and all that stuff. Had formal ear training before I had that before I got with Mary Lou in school. Do, re, mi, fa. Do, re, mi, fa, mi, fa, so. I learned also, I don't know, that before I got with her, she didn't teach me all of that. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, yeah, but so what I really was trying to do was get into the studios. It was like starting from scratch, because here I'm doing the other thing of use your ears to like, play this, play that.
Yeah.
12, 8 to 4, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, all kinds of stuff, all kind of crazy rhythms, which we specialized with Ross on, but it wasn't written out.
Right. Yow. Yeah.
Music is wonderful, and is limitless, and like this to me this interview is good because my path is a little different. Everybody's path is different. Everybody's, especially jazz musicians, and that's, and that was the thing even back in Cincinnati before I came to New York. Do your own thing. That's what you try to. I'm still trying to do it. I still don't know what's my own thing. That's because that's constantly changing. You know, what I did last year and what might not work this year.
The 20 years you picked,
45.
45 to 65. I was really in love with the mid-60s, Cannonball Adderley in particular. I loved the combination of this bebop influence, but then what we called soul jazz, I guess, and him in particular. Did you ever play with him?
No, never ever. Cleanhead would always refer to him. I know that little fat boy, and he talked about John Coltrane. That little boy played in my band. You know, so when Cleanhead was when I was playing with Cleanhead, when he went to New York and he made a record with Cannonball.
Yeah.
I was playing with him as a kid then. That had to be
I see.
the late 50s. So, yeah. But Cannonball, there was a fad, and that was the period. There's two particular styles that made the music flourish, made jazz flourish: the bossa nova and the soul, the funk that Cannonball played. That there, this there, that there, this, you know, all that,
Yeah.
all of that stuff. And yeah, that's the world was like, what was his name? The General Patton said, oh, he was so fortunate to be Patton.
Yeah.
General Patton, he was so fortunate to be alive while the world was aflame with war. So with me, I was so lucky in 1959, in the early 60s, that the world was aflame with jazz, because we would go out on the road for 4 weeks, 6 weeks at a time. You know, and the New York bands had two bands. We would alternate with Sonny Rollins, alternate with different people. They'd play an hour, we'd play an hour. This would go on, there'd be 6 sets.
Was this with Rasan?
Yes.
Okay.
At the, what's the 5 spot, not the 5 spot. Yeah, maybe it was, yeah, on the corner of 3rd Avenue and St. Mark's Place. We'd play, you know, we'd come in, we'd play the first set. We'd play Sonny Rollins, they come and burn. We come back, we're gonna burn. It would go on 6 nights a week. And you would be booked 4 weeks, 6 nights a week. 2 major bands. On my break, I might go over to the Vanguard. Now I was over to the Vanguard to jump in the cab, go over. It was like that.
What a time.
It was wonderful. And I can feel it I remember when it began to wane, you know.
When?
Like I said, 66, 67, 68, it started to, you notice they don't have 2 bands anymore. But that was a carryover from World War II. World War II, people were working night shifts, working around, and they'd have bands, you know, all on. Okay, the bands, we worked from 10:30 to 4. Bands don't play at 4 in the morning anymore. That's because during the war, that's the way it was. That people's jobs and things were like that.
Yes.
And that's where the 2 bands came from, that format. But me, myself, people that I talk to, now people have band jazz at 7 o'clock. That makes sense. After we had to make an adjustment. It makes sense. People get home from work. You live on Long Island, you live in the city. Why have them, they don't want to wait around at 10 o'clock to come and then go home. Come and have dinner, have jazz, then take your drive home. So there has to be adjustments. What I'm talking about is informal. There was no formal declaration. I'm just telling you as a working musician how I could see what happened.
Right. I saw it when I was playing when the drinking age went up. That affected a lot of the club work also. Were there a period of lean years that we were sort of just talking about that started to change? Was did that become like lean for you, harder to make a living?
No, not really. The two bands weren't existing. But what happened, things opened up more because, remember before when I first got to New York, there was a cabaret law. You could have drums except in certain places with certain kind of licensing. So, and that was just perfect for me. They threw the rabbit in the briar patch or wherever the rabbit got thrown. But because that was my format. My uncle would come by and we would play just bass and piano. So most of the jobs around town were bass and piano. And I know I didn't, there you go, you were saying, do you depend on a drummer? I didn't have a drummer. I was the drummer. So that's for me, you know, I never depend on a drummer, but one thing that I've learned, drummers, they're gonna throw their things at me, they'll like me, but I didn't fight them. Whereas with some groups, that's a ongoing thing. Oh, this is my, Mary Lou just taught me certain things about that too, about the drums. The drum is the most domineering instrument.
Mm.
You know. But do you ever see a man riding on an elephant's back? So there's things that can be done. You know,
That's good.
There's things that can, you know, but I've never, my best friends is drummers because I've been standing there all my life.
Yeah.
Well, I gotta be a dummy to not understand. You spend a lot of time with drummers. I think, buddy, you better learn how to get along with them. I think that's the way to go. Does that make sense? It
does indeed. Who are your? I noticed you played with Jimmy Witherspoon and Billy Eckstein.
Yeah.
More good singers. Chet Baker.
Yep.
All good.
Gloria Lynn, Dakota Staten, Betty Carter.
You must have
Josh
passed
White.
the auditions. Josh White. Oh.
Folk singer.
Yeah. You were mentioned with Bill Lee, like was in that.
That's probably where I got it. Mose Allison. Ever heard of him?
Yes, indeed. Seventh son of the.
Yeah, you see, but he was borderline folk.
Yeah.
He was in fact, if it hadn't been for Mary Lou, I don't know how I played with him. Because he has his own, he's unique, he's one of a kind. He has his own notation, his own stuff. And you look at it and compare it to your usual way of analyzing, it's not that, it wasn't that. I just had to go ahead and play it and say, okay. Mose Allison was one of the most different people that I ever played with. And one night I was there, and I guess Bill Lee had sent me to the top of the gate. I was playing with him. And I come down, I'm standing, there's Bill Lee standing. That used to happen to me a lot. I said, why didn't he take the gig? He's sending me on the gig. And I guess he wanted to know, what on earth is this guy gonna do with Mose? I'm not talking about Mose, but Mose had his own stuff now, that's what I'm saying. But I was shocked, and I had that happen to me a lot. The guy sent me on a gig, and then I looked down and there, what the? And the only two reasons I can think of is that they're wondering how I was going to handle this person, or, you know, if I was worthy of being sent on the gig, you know. But that happened to me a lot on good gigs, too. The guys, I said, what you sent me on the gig, why didn't you make the gig? I didn't say that, but that's what I was like very curious of. What the heck?
Well, we've talked for over an hour here.
Yeah.
Yeah. I enjoy your outlook and your positive attitude. If you hadn't become a musician, would you have had a second interest? Can you imagine doing anything else?
My father was a politician. Election day was a big day at my place. I sat on the knees of ambassadors. My father was in contact with senators and presidents and vice presidents. And I think in his heart, that's what he wanted me to do. But there was something about him that where he couldn't force it on me, but he was trying to, that's what his heart, and that's what he really wanted. Like if you was a 3-year-old and you come and say, hello young man, how are you, how are you, tell me, what are you gonna do when you grow up? What are you gonna be? A liar. I'm a little baby. That's the way I was groomed. Is that strange?
Well, I'm glad the music won out, personally.
Well, I look at it as I was destined to. I don't understand it. I mean, for me, like I said, I wasn't bragging when I'm saying that I never had a real day gig or like that. I'm overwhelmingly humbled by that. Hey, I got to do what I want to do, man. You know, that's, look there, I can't think of anything greater. I mean, it hasn't been easy. Oh, there was times when I was saying, which bank am I going to rob? No, I'm dramatizing it, but I'm saying there were times when I lived in a room a fourth the size of this room we're in now. I had to walk up 4 flights of steps with my bass. Have to get up after 4:30 in the morning, playing the gig, move my car at 8. Oh, that's been in New York City. Come on, man. It's not all peaches and cream. You know, there's been times, one time, a guy didn't like my behavior. You know, guys like you get a surprise. Maybe something like throw them through this window, or you're walking down the street and you get run over. You're a wise guy, huh? I've been through all kinds of stuff, man. You know what I mean? All kinds of stuff. Worked with Freddie Cole, Nat Cole's brother. The best of everything. The best of everything. Anything on the menu. Lobster, steak, anything. We never came through the back door. Never! Then there's other guys when we standing in the kitchen dripping, eating a sandwich. You know.
Yeah.
And and you got to come up through the back elevator. So it's a lot to the music. But the good thing is that I've been able to meet all kinds of people. All kinds of people, which is a wonderful thing. All kinds of musicians. And for me, the greatest thing that's ever happened to me is that I've been able to play with greats. You know, Bill Evans, Kenny Barron. You know, I've had a lot of people call me that I couldn't go work with Art Silver, Art Farmer. Just hear their voices on the phone.
Right.
So it's been good to me.
Well, on that note, I appreciate you spending this hour with me. It's been very informative and interesting.
Okay.
Thanks a lot.
All right. If you start getting rich, I want 10%.
You got it. I got a little contract just for that.
Anyway,
Okay.
It's a pleasure doing it, and I hope you use it for good. You know,
Yeah,
it does you
definitely.
good. All right.
Okay.